Welcome to Photoactive, a podcast about photography and technology. I'm Kirk McElhone.
And I'm Jeff Carlson.
You can find show notes, including any photos we discuss in this episode, at photoactive.co. That's photoactive.co. It's getting to that time of year where it's getting hot. Neither Jeff nor I live in any place where it gets really hot. We were just talking about air conditioners because I've got a couple of portable air conditioners in my house, and Jeff is buying a new in-window air conditioner. I think that's what you call it. And we're getting to that hot part of summer, and I feel sorry for some of you where it's really, really hot. In our last episode, we talked about traveling, and Jeff was kind enough to put as the image for that episode that famous picture of all his gear that he was taking on his Paris and Rome trip. And today we want to, we're going to cover several topics, but we're going to start by talking about something related to travel photography or related to summer photography.
So DP Review ran an article that we will link to in our show notes about using bug spray when you are out shooting and traveling. And actually, this is a really good point that I don't think a lot of people think about, because the chemicals that are in bug spray can be really bad for your camera or for your, say, Apple Watch, or basically all of your electronics that are sensitive.
And for you.
And for you, I suppose, I mean, don't drink the DEET, my goodness. Figuring that if you're out and you're traveling somewhere where there are a lot of mosquitoes, you'll probably have some sort of bug repellent. And you just sort of think of, all right, I just need to slather this on, keep the bugs away from me, especially if you're a landscape photographer, if you're a bird photographer. But it's good to know that these can be bad for your camera equipment. Like, you don't want to get it on your lenses. You don't want to get it on the plastic parts. I don't actually know if there's a lot more to say, but I'm glad that they wrote this article because it's just something that you don't think about. And then maybe your gear has deteriorated in some way.
Especially because I didn't know that bugs preferred attacking landscape photographers and bird photographers. I didn't know there were specific types of photographers that attracted bugs.
That's absolutely true. And I can tell you from experience that if you are out with a camera, the bugs will love you.
Yes. When I went to the link that you sent and I looked at the top picture, and well, it's a stock photo. It's not a photo that someone from DP Review took. But the first thing I was thinking was, oh, I see a lot of people on social media talk about using mist filters with their camera. Is this what the cheap way to do it? So a mist filter is basically a filter that makes it look like there's fog. Is that what it is? It seems to be quite trendy these days. I see on Reddit people, should I get a mist filter for my Fujifilm camera? The one thing I would like to say is you could use sunscreen on your lens, or at least on the filter in front of your lens, if you want to get that kind of murky look. People people probably still use Vaseline for that, right? There's a way of spreading it that you get a really almost psychedelic look that looks like the picture's melting.
I think really what the point is here is that you don't want the chemicals to be eating away at some of the lens coatings that are going to be on the glass.
Right.
And I would not ever smudge something onto
Well, but that's what it said on a filter. You get a throwaway filter,
on a filter.
And you can smudge something on it.
Okay, throwaway filter, sure.
Yeah.
All right, that makes more sense.
Okay, so that's enough for this one. Now, there's a new camera. Well, there's not much to say, as you said. It's just pointing it out.
Totally, yeah. No, that's exactly it.
Okay, so there's a new camera, and I'm surprised we hadn't talked about it. This is a really weird camera, and I'm not sure why this was released, and we'll know in 6 months if it sells really well or if it's a failure. It's the Fujifilm X-Half. Now, it wasn't long ago that we talked about a half-frame film camera. I think it was Konica or one of these old brands that released a half-frame film camera. This isn't new. Half-frame film cameras have existed for a long time. You'd get 72 pictures instead of 36 on a roll of film. But Fujifilm has released a camera, a digital half-frame camera. It's like the weirdest thing. It's cosplaying as a film camera. It's even got a film advance lever that you press in certain situations. You can either get the half-frame photos on their own, and they're sort of vertical photos to go for TikTok, right, that format. Or I think when you advance the lever, you can do two photos left and right, in a what you'd call it a semi-montage, right?
Yeah, a
It's
diptych kind of.
diptych. Diptych. It's called a diptych.
Yeah.
It's a tiny camera. It's really small. I just why? Why? But no, not just why, but why at this price? Because this costs. I have to search on the page here to find out how much it costs.
I think it's like $850.
$850. Now, if this was like $429, something like that, I would say, okay, this is a cool toy. But $850 for something, it's a fixed lens. It is a 35 millimeter equivalent, I think.
Probably close to that.
F2.8. It's got a bunch of controls on it, like it's got a exposure compensation dial that's accessible. You can shoot videos, but it's this weird kind of half frame. Am I wrong to think of it like this? Am I too old?
Wrong. Maybe, but I think what this is yes, it's expensive, but I think they're really targeting people who they don't care so much about that cost. But also, like, this is a way to get an analog camera experience without having to deal with all the messy aspects of film and limited exposures. And although actually, if I remember correctly, it actually has a mode where you get 36 exposures. Like, you can't do anything. You can basically put it into a mode where you are shooting as if you're shooting a roll of film, and it has some sort of built-in limitation that you can't actually.
And you advance it with the advance lever. And it has a bunch of film simulations, but I think if you're in film roll mode, you have to stay in the same film simulation and you can't change from photo to photo. Which, okay, we like constraints here on this podcast, but that seems an odd constraint.
I think the way you put that is really apt. Like, it's cosplaying as a film camera. And I mean, I think that's kind of what people want, because they want to be able to have that experience. Like, this is a very experiential camera. I think the images that you get out of it are not as important as the process of taking it. And so, I mean, these are not going to be super high quality. You could use an iPhone with a bunch of VSCO filters to get something very similar, right? You've already got an iPhone. Yeah, but you don't get that experience of advancing the limitations of advancing
the advanced lever. That's like
the advanced lever. And so
Grandpa's camera.
This is very much feeling like I want to be able to take pictures, but I still want them to be digital because I want to share them right away. I want to. I doubt anybody's really going to be doing much editing of them, but it moves this experience into the digital realm. So you have that convenience, but you also have the experience of being a camera hipster, basically.
Is there an affiliate link with this description you just gave here? Because it sounds like you're trying to talk people into it. I was looking before we started. I was looking before we started at sample photos, and most of them are really ugly. And what's interesting is, so we're going to link to a couple of things. Chris Nichols did a review for Petapixel, and he's got some sample photos. And Chris's photos are always interesting. But some of the other sites that I won't name have really ugly sample photos that are just like, these people don't even know how to take pictures. But one of the things I found surprising is that there is a light leak filter that makes it look like a camera that doesn't close with film. There is an expired film filter. I mean, what? Why? Again, you can do this with VSCO filters or Snapseed, or, there's plenty of apps that can do this.
Yeah, but that's just it. Like, there are plenty of apps that can do this. And sometimes you would have to apply that later. Sometimes you would have to, like, if you're using a phone, you're not getting that experience in the hand, that I'm walking around with a camera. So if you're focused on what the result is going to be, that's one thing. If you're focused on the experience, I think that's where this falls into.
I think the limitation of the vertical format is problematic, because
It's curious, yeah.
then you have to turn it sideways if you want to get something landscape. Let's say you're taking this on a vacation and you want to get some landscape photos of the beach. It's not really adapted to that. And I think they're, what are they, 16 megapixels? So they're not bad quality photos as such, 18 megapixels. So it's roughly half the megapixels of an X100, which is 40, I think, currently, the X100 series.
Yeah, something like that.
So this is 18. Obviously, the lens isn't as good, but it just seems like a weird thing. Now, I wonder if they're going to add this feature to other cameras, like the X100 or something, the half-frame feature. That would actually be interesting for the GFX or the X100 or something else to get this feature.
I don't know. I think it is such a niche product, but also I think Fuji has seen that because of people being interested in the X100 series, something small and portable, and you know Fuji has all of the knobs and buttons on their cameras, and so I think they are moving this into look, we're going to go full experiential. We're going to do something interesting, something different, and see how it goes. It's gotten a lot of attention. I don't know if it's gotten a lot of sales. The point is, it is an interesting experiment, and we applaud that, but I can't imagine getting one. Like, I don't roam enough to be able to want to do this. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen a couple articles in the past few weeks. Like, here's one on Digital Camera World. Has the film photography resurgence finally run its course? 12 months ago, film seemed like it was back for good. Has it now disappeared as quickly as it came back? And they mentioned the Fujifilm X1/2, but they talk about apparently people just aren't doing it as much anymore because it's work, because it's expensive, because, it's a fad, right? At the same time, Leica just announced that they're going to make a film stock. It's called Monopan 50. It's a black and white film stock with very fine grain. And I don't think Leica's ever made a film stock. Now, are they making it? Are they branding it made by some other company? I don't know. But Leica selling a film stock is quite interesting.
Yeah. I don't think the fad is burnt out. I think people are just looking for something different. And I mean, it could be like the timing could be perfect for Fuji because you'll get people who they bought a $200 film camera and they bought a bunch of film and then they paid to have it processed and then they realized, oh my God, this is going to be really expensive.
Yeah.
And so maybe in the long run, $850 for a digital camera that has a film experience, maybe that pencils out. I'm not sure.
I'd love to try one. Just out of curiosity, since I did start with film, but I'm not buying one. Not at that price. Again, $400, 400 pounds, I might, but not at that price. All right, so this is basically a news episode. We don't do these news episodes often. We should do news episodes every once in a while. The other thing we wanted to talk about is, and I think I've been saying this for years, OM System is considering AI upscaling as a solution to low-resolution sensors. Now, OM Systems used to be Olympus Camera, and they were bought by I don't know who and I don't know what country, and they changed the name to OM Systems. Now, I have a soft spot for that because my first film cameras were Olympus cameras, and they had a style that was really wonderful. When I came to the UK and I bought a real digital camera, the first two I had were Olympus. I had the Pen F for a while, which I really liked, and I switched to the Fujifilm X100 series. But they've always been really good cameras, really good lenses, and they're the Micro Four Thirds that's compatible with Panasonic lenses as well. So this ecosystem of Olympus and Panasonic was really nice. So their cameras max out at 20 megapixels. And what it looks like that I read is that the technology that they have developed, the way that they build these cameras, means that they would have to redesign everything to get a larger sensor. And this has to do with the amount of space between the sensor and the lens and the size of the lenses, Micro Four Thirds lenses, etc. So they're planning on they're interested on using AI-based image upscaling technology, what we call super resolution or whatever. I've been suggesting this for a while, that why get a bigger sensor when you can do the AI thing, which is going to be pretty darn good. The question is, Does a camera like that have the processing power to do this in camera?
Yeah, I think that's the huge question. And one of the things that they mentioned in the article is, we would love to do this if the processing power is there, if the data pipeline is there. And that's really key because this AI upscaling, like, it is resource intensive, it is computationally intensive. So there are a few ways that they could go about it. One, you could be shooting raw images and you'll always get the 16 or 20 megapixel version. And then when processing is available, then the camera can then do the upscaling for like the final image. So it's sort of doing some in-camera developing, sort of like, cameras do that now. You can do raw processing in your Fuji cameras. I think Sony also has this type of capability. So that would be one option. The other option is maybe it does have a fast enough sensor, a fast enough processor that it can just handle it on the fly. And that would be ideal. My big questions on that would be, is the quality good enough? Because one of the things that they mentioned is OM Systems customers tend to be a lot of bird photographers, a lot of, I think, action photographers, because when you don't have as much resolution to deal with, you can shoot a lot faster. And so you don't have to shuttle as much data between the sensor and the processor. And so if things are fast enough and if you have enough detail, when you upscale that, are you still going to retain that sense of detail? If I'm a bird photographer and I am firing off 50 pictures of an eagle that's flying by, then I want to make sure that the one that's in the perfect flight position and the lighting is great and all that, I want to make sure that the AI isn't going to screw up the texture of its feathers. And that tends to be the big problem. Now, when you're processing those after the fact, you can kind of mess with it a little bit. You can change some of the settings in something like Topaz or something like Lightroom. Will I be getting the quality that I want by not getting a quote unquote original optical image?
Well, the real question I have is, why would they do this in camera when you can do it in post? Are they assuming that maybe some of the people who have their cameras don't have software that can do this? Perhaps. But it still seems to me to open the door to false advertising. Look at our 40 megapixel sensor in fine print, 20 megapixels upscaled by AI, that sort of
now,
thing.
What's interesting is this is already happening. The iPhone does this right now, which a lot of people don't realize. But like in the iPhone, I want to say starting with the 14 or the 15, when you're taking a shot, like the regular default mode, it's going to, I think I'm going to screw up all the numbers here. Basically, you have I think it's a 48 megapixel sensor, but it's pixel binned. So you're capturing a 12 megapixel image. And when you take that shot and you look at it in your Photos app, it's actually a 24 megapixel image. And that's because what it's doing is it's grabbing the 12 megapixel image, and it's also grabbing a 48 megapixel image. And of course, it's doing this super fast in milliseconds, and then upscaling the 12 megapixel to 24 megapixels using the 48 megapixels as a reference. So you do end up with a good high quality image. But if you are just shooting like the regular stock thing, you are actually getting a super resolution upscaled image. But the quality is good enough. And I think just as important, Apple's processing is fast enough that it can do that. And honestly, nobody notices.
Well, that's because Apple has magic processors, and I don't think OM Systems has the magic processors yet. You were mentioning taking photos quickly. You want to do burst mode for a number of things. And if you're stuck in this thing that's going to give you 2 frames per second instead of 12 frames per second, or whatever a good camera can do in burst mode, then it's a limitation. Now, if you're aware of the limitation when you get the camera, fine. But I think this is the kind of thing, It just sounds to me like something that people are
Yeah.
going to be disappointed about
Yeah.
from in
Well,
one
and
way or
actually, I
another.
think in burst mode in the iPhone, I think it will not do that upscaling. I think if you're shooting in burst mode, you end up with 12 megapixel images. But I'd have to double check that. See, I bring up all these things that off the top of my head, I don't know. That's why we write books about them. It's
It's
very
too
complicated.
complicated. It's too complicated. Cameras are complicated devices.
And the key thing is, as you're there shooting, of course, you don't need to think about any of this stuff. So, will the end result be good enough? And will the experience of shooting be good enough? That's why I think, even though this is a really interesting idea, and if they can manage it technologically, it'll be super cool. But especially burst shooting, they would have to have some sort of you take your pictures and then you set the camera down, and then the camera will handle a lot of that in the background while you're not shooting. Or maybe, later on it'll buffer or something, because I don't know that you'd be able to get that in real time the way someone would expect.
But again, this means that they have to have a magic processor and have to have the right bandwidth and they have to have memory. And this turns that camera into much more of a computer with a lens than it was to start with. So we'll see if this applies across the board. Remember, this is a company that is actually trying to get around a hardware limitation rather than redesigning their cameras with a bigger sensor. I'm sure they can buy bigger sensors from Sony, Samsung, all the companies who make sensors, but it would mean retooling everything and it would probably mean that their lenses would no longer be compatible with older lenses, and that's a big problem. If a camera manufacturer says, our new camera is great, you've got 15 lenses, too bad you can't use them. Or if you have to buy an adapter and the adapter doesn't give you everything that the actual lens would do, they've boxed themselves into a corner. And I guess whoever bought Olympus is starting to realize that they shouldn't have bought Olympus.
Maybe.
All right, you wanted to talk about something new in Lightroom.
So, just to round this out, Lightroom had an update a couple of weeks ago that actually does some interesting things. For one thing, I mean, maybe not outwardly interesting, but before, if you were going to do super resolution or you're going to do noise reduction, what you would do is you would open up this basically separate interface, make the settings, and then it would do the processing to to denoise it or upscale it or basically reprocess the raw image. And then you end up with a new image, a new actual file that's been processed. Well, in the latest update, they've changed that. So now they have basically worked all of this in so that if you go to the detail panel, there's just a denoise checkbox or a super resolution checkbox, and it does the processing of it, but you don't end up with a separate image. So it's a little more compact. Now, the downside to this is that you can't batch process a bunch of things. So if you have a whole series of like 30 really noisy shots that you want to denoise, before you could select them all and then denoise them and then sort of use that as your baseline for what you're going to edit. Now you can't really do that. I don't know if a lot of people were doing that. And from what I understand, Adobe is aware of this. They're trying to find a solution. So that's just kind of neat in terms of now you just click the denoise and it happens. You don't have to worry about the complexity of another image. But the one thing that I wanted to show, and I have shared my screen with Kirk so he can see what I'm doing here. In Lightroom Classic, it has a distraction removal feature. Now, we've seen this before.
Distraction removal.
Distraction removal. And so what this has been before was, let's say you have tourists in the background, trash on the floor. Like this is in the removal tool. And so you can, draw over it and make things disappear. One thing that they have added, and this was a technology preview last year that's now released in the app, is a way to deal with reflections, like window reflections. And it doesn't always work. It really depends on the image, but sometimes it can be really good. So what I have here, and again, pictures will be in the show notes. I went to a used bookstore and they had this case of old video games. We're talking like Atari 2600 cartridges. And I just thought it was great, so I took a picture. But of course, they're behind glass, and so you have a little bit of a reflection. When I go to the removal tool,
oh, that's right. I can see you in the glass,
exactly,
holding your camera
and
there.
Like our eyes are used to seeing this, and so when you first look at this, you probably don't even pay attention to that because
no, I didn't.
That's just normal. But maybe it is a little bit distracting. So now, if I apply the distraction removal, and I've already done this, so I'm just going to unhide it.
Wow.
It's basically gotten rid of the reflection. Now, what's interesting about this is it hasn't just taken the brightest parts and made them darker or whatever. There's a slider here that you can determine how much of the effect to apply. And so if I bring this down to 0, it was at 100. If I bring it down to 0, this is how the original was. If I bring it to -0, you can actually get rid of everything but the reflection.
Ooh, this is one of these like Jack Bauer in 24, enhance that image.
This is the enhance that image, yeah. And so now the picture that I'm seeing is literally me. My body's in silhouette because it's dark, but you can see I'm holding my phone. You see my hands. You see the shelves behind me, the bookshelves, the floor, and the actual content is gone. And I just find this fascinating. Now, this is all being done with AI. I've run it on a few different test images. Sometimes it just really doesn't work at all. But something like this, where it's really kind of straightforward, it's actually quite impressive.
That's pretty neat. One thing I noticed, now I don't use Lightroom, is the interface of Lightroom looks like it's from the 1990s.
Yeah, this is Lightroom Classic.
It certainly is classic. They really should update that. That's quite an amazing feature. I don't know why they call it distraction removal, though.
Oh, so it's because reflections would be a distraction.
Oh, I see. Within the distraction removal, there's reflections and people.
And people, yeah. I hadn't scrolled up far enough, so yeah. Yeah, so then the people is the other one.
Are you assuming that they're going to add other distractions that they remove in the future in this tab?
Sure, quite possibly. I mean, you can still do it manually. So the top section is very much just the remove, like you can paint over something. But what this is doing is it's looking at your image.
Right.
It's identifying things that could be removed automatically. So if I had a shot with some people in the background, it would highlight them as possible people distractions. So,
right.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Okay, one more thing before we finish, as long as we're talking about new cameras. Leica released a new camera a month or two ago, the Leica Deluxe 8, D-Lux 8. And this is an interesting camera. It's about $1,900, which is not cheap. It's basically a point-and-shoot camera that goes in your pocket. I don't know if this is a modified Panasonic camera, because a number of small cameras that Leica has released have been built around Panasonic cameras with Leica lenses. But what's interesting is that they're trying to make this a really high quality point and shoot camera. It's a micro four thirds, it's 22 megapixels. It's got a zoom lens with equivalent of 24 to 75 millimeters. Now, I had a little Panasonic camera when I first came to the UK with one of those little zooms that goes voot, voot, and just a simple point and shoot, and it was really useful. I've seen a number of people on the Leica subreddit who've been talking about how much they like this camera. It doesn't seem like Leica people would want a camera like this, but it's kind of interesting that they would that they're iterating to, this is the 8, I guess there have been 7 others before, but they're still iterating with this. It's still a market for this sort of thing. Of course, it could just be a market for people who already own Leicas and want a simple one that they can put in their pocket. But I've read some good reviews. I've seen some really good sample images from this. It might be the kind of camera for those of you who want to spend more than usual on a camera and have it say Leica with a red dot on it. So worth pointing out.
Yeah. I mean, if we're going to buy all sorts of like miscellaneous cameras, a little half camera, a little expensive, let's do that.
Everyone should own multiple cameras in addition to their smartphone.
That's not a terrible idea, except that you're actually...
You need multiple money to do that.
Well, I was going to say, for a while you were the opposite of that, because you had gotten rid of everything, but now you've crept a little bit up there. You still have your Fuji X100VI.
I have my Leica Q3 and my Fujifilm X100VI.
Okay, yeah, keep it minimal.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to keep both of them, honestly, but we'll see. Anyway, that's enough for this week. That was a lot of news. I think we should do news episodes more often, because there often is news that we don't talk about. What are we going to talk about next time? Do we have any idea? Next time brings us near August, and August is the doldrums, as they say. So
it's never the doldrums. We're always exciting and have things to do.
Don't sound so thrilled, Jeff. Until next time, bye.
Until next time, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to PhotoActive. You can find show notes, including any photos we discuss in this episode, at photoactive.co. That's photoactive.co. We couldn't afford the M. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/photoactivecast. That's photoactivecast in one word. You can subscribe to PhotoActive in your favorite podcast app or on Apple Podcasts. See the links on our website. And think about leaving us a rating or review in iTunes or in your podcast.